Hello and welcome. This is a stream to kind of show you how to set up a home lab all for free using Veeam products. There's a short presentation here and then we'll have a demo at the end. To kind of start off here, I have a history a history chart of some of the features that have come through Veeam over time. Starting with just the backup and replication in 2008 and all of these features that we keep adding, which most of these features are available in the free editions as well. Or if you want to try out the product for 30 days, you can get a free 30 days license if you ever wanted to play out the extra features. And then kind of something that sets us apart in the backup field. We are stupid simple. We have granular restores that are very intuitive and almost like going through a file explorer inside of Windows or an application explorer that you're already familiar with. It's extremely scalable, meaning that you can put as many or as few proxies in your infrastructure as you would like to help speed up processing of your backups. And then of course the schedule control. There's a lot of flexibility in the schedule control, whether you want your jobs to run hourly, weekly, daily, or a one-time kickoff. We're also very reliable with the data format, in that meaning you can take a full backup file that you've done from any Veeam machine and send it over to another instance of Veeam and be able to restore it there. We also have orchestration processes. So biggest example is storage snapshot orchestration that we have to use the integrated snapshot or storage snapshot system that's on a lot of products and orchestrate those snapshots so that we can create a schedule outside of the window of that storage system itself. And we're also flexible. Our biggest word and our biggest buzzword I think we use everywhere is agnostic. We work with just about any type of storage system. We sit on just about any type of hardware. We don't care. We'll generally back it up. And we're also cloud ready. And that doesn't just mean VCSP. We offer backup for cloud products. We offer restore to cloud products. And we also offer object storage. Now this is kind of the base platform with backup and replication in the middle. And then our universal storage API is connecting into those storage systems for the storage snapshots like we were talking about earlier. And then we go anywhere from virtual to physical to SaaS like Microsoft Office 365, and again, that entire cloud tree. But enough about that. We're moving over to what is the Community Edition, because that's what we're going to be talking about for the majority of this session. The Community Edition is basically Veeam's gift. You can use most of our products up to 10 workloads for free. You can use it on your home environment to back up if you have a home lab, if you have a workstation, and you just want to do a single install on your desktop, you can use that and back it up to even like OneDrive, so it's off your site, so if you need to restore something, you've got it. We can do instant recovery of virtual machines. You can also replicate that same data. So if you have 10 workloads, you could do an initial backup of that machine. You could replicate that same machine, and you could have 6 backup copies of that same machine and still be under one workload. And then restore that machine to the cloud and back it up from the cloud, and again, one workload. We have centralized management through backup and replication. For your agents, your standalone machines, you can deploy this agent out so backup and replication as a whole manages those to a centralized repository, making it easier to find your backups when you need them. We also offer secure restore, which means before we restore the entire machine back to your production environment, we allow you to be able to scan that with your antivirus of choice. As long as the antivirus has a command line interface snap-in, we can tap into an antivirus to be able to restore that data based on any types of scans that you have selected. And synthetic and active full backups are offered, and change block tracking, of course, isn't taken out of the free product. The lab that we're going to be looking at is going to be backing up network shares, managed agents, virtual machines, and then we're going to backup copy that data, and then replicate that data, and then we can show you how in VeeamONE you can set up alarms and remediations to be able to do some automation. And then, of course, we're going to take a look at a standalone agent backing up to OneDrive, and then how you can use Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365 to make an additional copy of that data back on premise if you'd like. To note with Veeam Backup and Replication, you can have up to 10 free workloads, but you can have unlimited what we call ad hoc VM jobs. It means that you can do a backup of a virtual machine, but kick it off as a one-time process with Veeam Zip instead of having a schedule for that machine. We also still offer our item level recovery and e-discovery. There's no expiration date on this license, which means you can use it as long as you want and don't have to worry about going over to a paid edition. You have access to the latest version of the product, and you can make as many copies of that data as you want, and free file copies. We also offer Quick Migrate with VMs, which uses the Smart Switch technology. And you can recover any machine that's even been backed up by another Veeam server. And again, we still have that primary storage orchestration within the free product. Looking at shares, when you're considering you have 10 workloads, one workload will get you 250 gigs of data backed up from a share. So if you have like a home NAS, a home file share, something that you have your Plex server running off of, we can back that up. And we allow you to use the new change block file tracking system, which will give you faster NAS backups or any types of share backups than pretty much anywhere I've seen on any vendor. We go based on the thumbprint or hash from a folder, and if the hash for that folder during the incremental backup hasn't changed, we can automatically move on to the next folder in the file structure to save hours of time doing any type of share backup. You can have unlimited file proxies to be able to get that backup as fast as possible, and of course, free health checks on the share backup files. Now, managed agents versus standalone agents. The only thing that differentiates them is who's managing that agent. And by agent, I mean like Veeam Agents for Windows or Veeam Agents for Linux. If backup and replication is orchestrating the schedule, the repository, and everything for that agent, that's what we consider a managed agent. Standalone means it's outside of the backup and replication infrastructure, and you manage it locally on a machine. You can orchestrate one agent per workload. So if you have 10 computers around your house and you want to manage them through one other computer to have one centralized storage for all of your backups, you could install Veeam Backup and Replication and communicate out to all of those servers to store data back on the backup and replication server. You can even think about this for virtual machines that have iSCSI drives. iSCSI drives are not able to have snapshots, which means we're not able to back up that data from the underlying storage system. It's a limitation through VMware to unlock those disks to back up. So if you install an agent inside the machine, it's able to enumerate that data and send it back to the centralized repository as backup. You can have unlimited unmanaged agents, meaning the agents installed on a standalone machine, where you'd have to go out to each of those machines to check on the backups and that process. We don't limit any types of restores when it comes to agents. You can restore files and volumes. You could restore a physical machine back to a virtual environment, kind of like a pseudo P2V scenario. The source side data encryption and protection is still offered, and you can have custom post or pre and post scripts for any of your applications that fall outside of like the VSS freeze. And for VeeamONE allows you to add in one backup and replication server, and then 3 of those proxies and 3 of those repositories into a heat map. Now, heat map is a visual representation of how your components are functioning, and we'll take a look at that later in the demonstration. Checking on your backup and replication environment to make sure it meets what's considered best practices. We have alarms and checks. We can check your virtual infrastructure for best practices. Maybe you have a machine's VMware tools that are out of date. And you can check hosts and data stores. And then later we're going to configure some remediation actions with some automated scripts that are underneath. And one of my favorite, backup for Microsoft Office 365 also follows this 10 rule, meaning you get 10 users and you can back up anything for that user, including their OneDrive, their email, their SharePoint. And then you can have 1 terabyte total of SharePoint data. So if you have a couple shared sites, you're able to back that up as well. There's no limit on where you can store that data. You can store in their object storage, a share, a local drive, nice SCSI connection. Anything that you're able to do in the paid edition, you're able to do in the free edition. Same follows for restores. You can restore back to the original location. You can export that data locally. And we support on-premise loads for Exchange 2013 or newer. You can generate custom reports as well to see how much space is being used and which users are still protected. Now over to the fun part, looking at everything that's been configured so far. So we will start with the backup and replication server here. And it should have it installed, and it is running Windows 10. Up here, we can see that the agents jobs are configured. We have a file backup job configured, and then these machines. Now, I have 5 virtual machines that I'm backing up in this case, and we can take a look at them here. And it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You're not restricted on the number of proxies you can use. I happen to just have 1 proxy for the backup because I have a very small environment, so I don't need the excess. You're not limited on any type of retention. You can have forever forward incremental, you can make synthetic backups, you can create periodic fulls. There's absolutely no restrictions right here. As for guest processing, you're allowed to enable guest processing, which means we're going to put a freeze within the guest before performing the backup. And here, if you need, you can also create custom scripts if you have custom applications that do or don't need to be processed. And again, the schedule can be very flexible. You can run it on a monthly basis. If you click periodic, we can go down to the minutes, or tell it to run continuously, which means as soon as the backup finished, you're already creating another backup in your environment. In some cases, customers like to do that with replication jobs so that they have the most current version of their replica if they need to fail over. Now, for adding the agents in the file backups, we'll add that through inventory. First, we'll take a look at the agents. I went ahead and made a protection group. I like backing up from protection groups because they're the most dynamic way to back up files if you have a CSV or a group of machines from your Active Directory object list that you want to back up without having to come here every time you want to add a new machine. In this case, all I have is the free agent, which is 1 machine. And again, it's very flexible on when you would like to perform that backup. And since we're performing it through backup and replication, we can use the repository that all of our other backups are going to. The next section is file shares. In this case, I added a file server, which is just a Windows machine. And you still have access to the backup I/O control. The backup I/O control allows you to control how much load that you're putting on that share. So if you know that you may have a higher load due to it being like a media server on your home network, you could always tailor this back down so that we're not hitting it as hard for the backup period. And again, you can add as many file proxies as you'd like. Under the Agents job, we can take a look, since we've added in the protection group, it's just going to be that folder, but we know there's only one machine under there, which we can see here in the background. The backup mode is not restricted. You can do any type of backup with the 10 workloads. And since we're doing it from backup and replication, again, we get to use that centralized repository and application guest processing if you need to do a freeze on that machine. As for the file shares, again, we're getting to be able to send that to a centralized place, but another thing is we can select exactly which folder from that share that we want to back up. If we don't want to back up the entire system, we could back up, say, share 1. And the storage is going to be our centralized second repository, just so that we're not sending the same data to that NAS again. And the schedule option is just as flexible. Coming down, we can take a look. We have those same machines added for a replication. With the replication job, you can select any of the settings you'd normally be able to use in a traditional backup job. Sorry, cat. And have the data transfer go from selecting a source proxy to a target proxy. Again, there are no restrictions for these steps as you did in the paid edition. The only restriction is you can only have up to 10 workloads, which is extremely nice, especially if your infrastructure requires you to have a re-IP. You could re-IP your scheme if you have 2 hosts that are on separate networks for failover. And backup copy, because why not have a 3-2-1 rule at home? And we are not able to set up GFS. But other than that, all other features are available for backup copy. And we can take a look at VeeamONE, which is where some of the fun automation process is going to come in here. So we can see virtual machine 2 through 5 are healthy. And what we're going to do is cause a disruption on virtual machine 4. And I'll show you why here in a second, but I want to kind of get the process rolling because it can take a moment sometimes. So we're going to come in here and we're going to stop the VMware Tools service. And in most VMware documentation, it's noted that the VMware tools being running in a successful state with the host is a good indication if the guest OS is alright as well. So we're going to start the ball rolling on killing the VMware tools to kind of simulate what would happen if theoretically the guest would be down. And we'll keep an eye on virtual machine 4 here. The alarms that we're able to configure and the one that we're going to be looking at is heartbeat missing for VM. And I've narrowed down this infrastructure to a select virtual machines instead of the entire infrastructure in this case. And you can see that just from top level under assignment. We set the rule to error out within 1 minute because I want to try to get this kicked off as soon as possible, but you can set this threshold to anything that you'd like it to be. And we can see the assigned virtual machines. And I will say I did kick off virtual machine 1 from this list because it had some problems and it had to be restored. And I wasn't sure how well it would do during the demo, so I'd rather not have it in there. And how I'm getting these actions to kick off is through notifications. Now, under notifications, it allows you to run a script. And that script does have to be a command file. And I have a command file set up for errors. So when it detects that the VMware tools are down, it'll go into an error state. And then whenever I resolve it, I have another script that kicks off. Now these 2 scripts actually kick off 2 additional PowerShell scripts. And I'll show you those PowerShell scripts here. I've labeled one as in failover. The failover script here is actually going to fail over the replicas that I've been making for this VM. And then I've put an additional piece of code here to update a file location with a group of logging in a sense, so I can see if something like this happens and kicks off, I can go back to this folder and check the log that I've created. And this is the fail back script, which when I hit resolve on that alarm, it should kick off for us. And we'll go ahead and check back on that again here under infrastructure to see if it's detected yet, and it doesn't look like it's detected that virtual machine 4 is down yet, which is why we kicked it off early. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the reporter view of VeeamONE. There are very few reports that you're not able to see in the VeeamONE free edition, and that's just because they fall into the paid edition, and it'll let you know right away that if that's not available in this version, it'll say you need the full version. The couple of reports we'll look at here is first the Veeam Backup and Replication. I've already added the server that we were just looking at, but this is a quick view of what we have installed. As you can see, the last replication job failed. We knew that from looking at the console before, and that was due to it already being in a failover state when it was scheduled to be kicked off that one time. We can also see how our backup windows are doing, how long they're taking for both the backup and replication jobs. If we have a failed or warning, which again, we know that replication job failed for us. And then a quick view of how many VMs that we're protecting, which is a really powerful quick view at your infrastructure without having to go through and click all of the sections in backup and replication. As long as you can get connection to the server too, you can remote connect through the browser to check this out without having to log into this machine directly. Come back here and we can see the VMware trends. So the CPU usage within our cluster, how much memory it's using. Again, without getting into even VMware at this point, we can take a good look at how our backups are doing and how our clusters have come up. And one of my favorite is actually down here. It's called a heat map. So the heat maps I was talking about earlier in the presentation allows you to see like your proxy usage and your repository usage to make sure your components aren't being overtaxed at any point. And then over here, the free space on your repository. So if I have a repository added in and I see something over here that's red, I would be more concerned about something being wrong with it. And if you can tell right here in the middle, there are a couple orange, but we can see that there's still plenty of capacity for the amount of backups that we're doing. And we'll take a look at VMware alarms. So you can see your total issues within your host. We have a couple hosts that looks like here having some problems, but overall, majority of our hosts are healthy. And our cluster is good. Disk latency. This is a great one to look at if you're having any types of problems with, say, clusters, like SQL clusters or Exchange DAGs. If you have any type of failover in those DAGs, check out what your VM disk latency is and how much RAM that you're using up. Sometimes that I/O will kick over a failover prematurely if you're just barely on that threshold. And down here, we can take a look at some of the hosts in our clusters, what warnings and errors that they present. It looks like it may need a little bit of love. We'll come over and take a look at our desktop edition of Veeam Agents for Windows. Now this is standalone and it's not connected back to the Veeam Backup and Replication server. But we can take a look here at the job settings and see how it is in fact going to the cloud, which is going to be a OneDrive account. Edit the job. Of course, I don't have user account controls turned down for notifications. In this case, we're going to do a volume backup. You can only do volume backups with the standalone agents or file backups of the operating system drive. It doesn't allow you to do additional drives connected to that machine. And in the destination, we have Microsoft Office or Microsoft OneDrive. You can get a OneDrive account for free that's only 5 gigs, but you can get a 100 gig OneDrive account for about $8 plus have a lot of the applications available online. So it's fairly cheap to have a complete backup of your desktop machine's operating system. And this is the scheduling option. Right now I have it set for every day in the evening. That way it doesn't affect whenever I'm using the computer. Granted, if you're a late person, you may set that more towards the morning when you wouldn't be using it. Finish here. Since we're sending that data to OneDrive, we can actually download that data again to have another additional copy of that data as sort of a backup copy if you're looking to try to make a 3-2-1 rule of your machine. This will help get you one step closer. In this case, I'm backing up that Office 365 account that I was backing up this Veeam Agents for Windows data to. And if we take a look at the latest point in the OneDrive state, and we can see where Veeam Backup folder was made. And if you view the properties, we can see that this was the one created by our Veeam Agents for Windows. So now, not only do I have a copy of my data out in the cloud for this desktop machine, I also have a copy of that data back locally again in another safe place. And if we come back over here, it looks like it still has not detected the heartbeat failure. Did notice it takes about 20 minutes sometimes to cycle back through. So we'll go ahead and manually kick off the script so you can see this fail over and the alert creation afterwards. So we'll run the script. And we can see these are already started to kick off on this machine from the VeeamONE instance. And we can either commit failback or undo the failback from here. Actually, it should be in the failover state. I think the remediation came through before we could see it. And we can actually see when that happened. Nope, it looks like it happened earlier. If you do have any questions about being able to use a community edition of the product, we do have a community edition versus standard enterprise and enterprise plus right on our website, and I can actually share that here in chat. If there's anywhere that says it has a partial, you can come over here and hover over and it'll tell you what it means for the community edition as well. And it does for all products. So you can do Veeam Agents for Linux, Windows, and VeeamONE. We do have, again, that comparison, which I've shared the link here. And to wrap up, I think Veeam makes a great addition of community products, and it allows you to back up just about anything that you would have in a home environment, and they offer more workloads than even I would use, and I have 4 computers sitting on my desk right now and a server that's actually off over there because power costs are real. Offering Veeam Agents for Windows, Linux, Microsoft Office 365 Community, and VeeamONE. There's a lot more free tools as well, but like VeeamPN. But other than that, that kind of concludes what I had to talk about. Or cat. Thank you.